From the headquarters of Telesur English in Quito, Ecuador, I'm Carla Gonzalez. This is from the South. We begin in Brazil. 2 military policemen have been arrested in connection with the murders of Rio de Janeiro councilwoman Marielle Franco and her driver Anderson Gomez. 38-year-old Franco was a member of the Socialist and Liberty Party and was killed in March 2018. One officer is suspected of gunning down both people, while the other is accused of being the driver of the vehicle. In January, 5 other military policemen were arrested in connection with Franco's killing. Electricity is progressively returning to Venezuela following the cybernetic attack on the country's power grid. Work and school have been suspended for another day, but light once again illuminated the streets of the capital, Caracas, last night. Authorities have been working to fully restore power. Venezuelan President Nicolás Maduro says Venezuela could be the first country to receive an attack of this kind, and he blamed it on the United States.
Imperialista de Estados Unidos ordenó este ataque.
The US government ordered this attack in the moment they saw that all its attempts to attack Venezuela had failed. They came with a criminal strategy made by criminal minds who have already been in wars such as those in Iraq, Syria and Afghanistan. Only criminal minds think about hurting people. They ordered this attack because they thought that the Venezuelan people would surrender. But on the contrary, the Venezuelan people resisted.
President Maduro also praised workers of the power company on their work to restore power.
We're advancing thanks to the workers and professionals at Corpo Elec. I want to offer them the recognition of the whole country for their ability, experience and professionalism. At each power station there are workers with 20, 25, even 30 years of experience. An attack with these characteristics may be very difficult for any other country to cope with. Maybe they would have had no idea what was going on. But in record time, we managed to identify that it was a cybernetic attack and liberate the brain of Corpo Elec. We were able to, step by step, neutralize the electromagnetic attacks on communication systems, and we managed to prevent physical attacks on power stations because of the armed forces.
Maduro also said the government has provided food and basic services for citizens.
The government is attending to all the needs for food and water in the middle of this emergency and situation which we're facing. The main thing is to progressively recover the electricity system. Meanwhile, we have been providing security services to protect peace and citizens.
He also confirmed that 2 people have been caught trying to conduct further sabotage.
We captured 2 individuals who were trying to sabotage the communication system from Guyana to Guiri. They were captured in the act, and now they're in jail. They're speaking to us, and I say not just to the intellectual authors of this unexpected attack, but also to the Venezuelan justice system. Let's take down the people that arranged this attack on law, life, and peace.
So let's go now to our correspondent, Laura Prada from Caracas, who has the latest.
Hello, yes, nice to greet you. Well, in fact, Venezuela continued to resist this electrical attack that suffered the national electrical system here in Venezuela few days ago, since Thursday last week. Last night, President Maduro was speaking to the nation, and he was saying that Venezuela suffered a 3 attack in 3 stages was affected this attack. One, a cybernetic attack directed to the brain of the hydroelectrical plant of Guiri, and another one, an electromagnetic, an equipment to block communication signals, and also physical, burned and attack and explosions of stations and substations, electric stations, substations. He also condemned this attack, and he called this a moment of active resistance that promote solidarity and peace between all the people of Venezuela. He also announced an extension of the suspension of work and scholar activities at all levels for another day until tomorrow, Wednesday. A group of Telesur have been going around the city checking out those places that already had electric supply to check the stability of this recovery, and they could see they saw that those places that already had electric power were still with light, but also they found that there are places left without electricity having come back. This is what we have for now. Venezuela is still resisting this national blackout caused this attack that some have qualified as a terrorist attack to the Venezuelan national electrical system. We'll continue here, and throughout the day we'll be updating the status here in Venezuela.
Thank you, Laura. That was Laura Prada from Caracas. And the metro in the city has been greatly affected by the sabotage and is still shut down. Authorities have been implementing plans to provide safe transport for citizens.
Venezuelan authorities have activated contingency plans to mitigate water shortages and power outage across Caracas. For example, in order to help citizens that can't use the metro anymore, but lines have been set up that follow the same route as the underground.
The units are arriving, the people remain organized, and we have been joined by the state authorities who are supporting the people. I think that our people's will has allowed for things to remain peaceful.
Despite the issues, citizens continue showing a spirit of resistance.
This is the first time in 47 years that there's not water or electricity in my home. My family is in Barquisimeto. I haven't been able to get in touch with them since Thursday, because they also have no service.
Venezuelans know how to react. We haven't seen these many issues in many years, so that's why we remain calm.
While school and work are still suspended, the streets of Caracas slowly return to their usual state.
We are ready for the announcement that activities are set to resume normally. We will react accordingly to provide as many units as needed for citizens to move around the city. Our people will preserve, we will overcome, just like we did during the oil production stoppage, when the Guarimbas took siege of the city during the last coup attempt. Just like every time we've been attacked, we will overcome.
In the west of the country, restoring power has proven to be more difficult, while in the rest of the country, power remains weak and intermittent, and yet people remain calm.
People are showing a high degree of maturity. We can go back to 2002. There were gas shortages. That affected commerce in general, and yet people learned to deal with it, to mature. We have been living through a cruel economic war. We are seeing food shortages, a lack of medicine, and yet people understand why this is happening.
Regardless of any attacks, the government's priority is restoring basic services as soon as possible.
U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo says the U.S. is withdrawing its remaining personnel from Venezuela. Pompeo made the statement on Twitter. However, Maduro cut diplomatic ties with the United States on January 23rd. The president made the decision after the U.S. recognized opposition lawmaker Juan Guaidó as interim president. The Peruvian president, Martín Vizcarra, has sworn in the new president of the Cabinet of Ministers, former actor Salvador del Solar. The new ministerial cabinet has also been sworn in, with 9 changes made. This comes after the former president of the cabinet, César Villanueva, resigned from his post on Saturday. Cuba has rejected U.S. claims that it has thousands of troops stationed in Venezuela. Foreign Minister Bruno Rodriguez said Cuba abides by the principles of sovereignty and non-interference in the internal affairs of other countries. He added that the allegations are part of a scheme to discredit the legitimate government of Venezuela. The Cuban government also denounced the U.S. State Department's decision to add more Cuban entities to its list of sanctions. The government said the economic blockade on Cuba violates international law. The United Nations General Assembly has voted for almost 30 years on ending the sanctions against Cuba. The United Nations has highlighted the importance of the special jurisdiction for peace to maintain peace in Colombia and protect the victims of the internal conflict. The UN mission in Colombia has lamented that this jurisdiction still doesn't have a legal framework 2 years after the peace agreement was signed. It also asked President Iván Duque to respect the peace agreement and the independence of the special jurisdiction. On Sunday, Duque returned the legislation to Congress after objecting to 6 of the 159 articles in the law. We have more stories coming up. We'll be back.
We are present at every event where our nations are staring. We believe in a new global vision, united in every broadcasting. We keep expanding our horizons and working on a closer and better communication. Now, in Grenada, Telesur, the news source from South America and the Caribbean.
Welcome back. Former Panamanian President Ricardo Martinelli is now facing charges of espionage during his time in power. Martinelli will be tried this Tuesday for allegedly spying between 2009 and 2014 on some 150 people, including journalists, trade unionists, and other opponents. The prosecution has requested a 21-year sentence. In Ecuador, the president of the National Assembly, Elizabeth Cabezas, has been accused of blocking a corruption probe into President Lenín Moreno. Lawmaker Ronnie Aliaga denounced the assembly head for abuse of power. A conversation between Cabezas and the Interior Minister Maria Paula Romo was leaked, where Cabezas spoke about a voting session to decide on the investigation. The president and his family have been allegedly linked to 2 offshore companies used to buy an apartment.
There must be an investigation to know if there was an abuse of power. I take the word of the Social Christian Party that said it will support us in our proposal of having a debate in the National Assembly about opening an investigation into the president, Lenín Moreno.
I don't hold on to my position. I think if anyone has to lose something, that is the country. If we keep paying attention to all the scandals of this country, we will not do anything else. I believe that our responsibility of the ones who are in charge of the country is to talk about topics that are framed within the Constitution.
Also in Ecuador, the International Monetary Fund has approved the $4.2 billion loan announced previously by the country. Finance Minister Richard Martinez said the IMF will make an initial disbursement of more than $600 million. In a statement, the head of the international body, Christine Lagarde, said that the government of Ecuador is already preparing a reform package, which is part of the agreement. In Chile, 2 men have beaten up a young man in what appears to be a homophobic attack on a bus in the capital, Santiago. The victim suffered a broken nose and several bruises. The attack was captured in a cell phone video. The footage shows the 2 aggressors yelling homophobic insults as they hit him. The two alleged attackers are in preventive detention and have been charged with crimes of violent robbery and homophobic attacks.
They started to make fun of him, to harass him. They started mistreating him. And they also tried to steal his sneakers, as well as some earrings that he was wearing. And Luis resisted and changed seats inside the bus. That's when he was beaten.
The Airline Pilots Association in Argentina has ordered its members not to fly Boeing 737 MAX 8 airplanes after the fatal crash involving that model in Ethiopia that killed all on board. The state airline Aerolíneas Argentinas is the only Argentine company that operates the model, with 5 of the aircrafts in service. Meanwhile, Ethiopia, China, Indonesia, Singapore, South Korea and Australia have also ordered their airlines to ground the jets. The decision comes after the second deadly crash involving the 737 MAX 8 in less than 5 months. Hundreds of students in Algiers are back in the streets protesting against the postponement of elections. President Abdelaziz Bouteflika announced that he won't seek a 5th term. However, he cancelled April's elections and hasn't rescheduled them. Students are accusing President Bouteflika of trying to prolong his 2-decade-long rule despite abandoning his bid for another term.
We do not accept the extension that was announced. They said new elections will be coordinated. That is fine. As long as they are the scheduled elections, we simply do not accept this.
In Guinea-Bissau, Madem G15, the party, has announced that it is open to a coalition, while the nation is still waiting to hear the results of recent parliamentary elections. The party that wins is expected to appoint the future prime minister.
When the people can give us 49 point however many, if you don't get 51%, then it can't work. A coalition is needed, but it also depends on the other political parties.
The National Union of Metal Workers of South Africa has vowed to protest against the increase in electricity tariffs. In a press statement, the union said the tariff increase by the state power company will be disastrous for the working class, who are already struggling to pay for electricity. It added that the increase will also negatively affect the nation's industries and lead to redundancies. South Africa is counting down to its 5th general election since the dawn of democracy in 1994. Latest polls show that the ruling African National Congress will suffer some losses compared to previous years, but the party has intensified its election campaign.
Africa's president and ruling party leader Cyril Ramaphosa has been on an intensified campaign trail ahead of the 2019 May elections. The party he is leading has resonated with a majority of South Africans since 1994, assured of landslide victory every election. If the recent polls are anything to go by, the ANC remains a favorite to win the elections, but with lower numbers. Its support base remains at grassroots level, where the people still see the party as the liberator.
We said to the people of South Africa, for one day the DA will be in government.
But in more urban areas, the battle for votes is tense. The official opposition party, the Democratic Alliance, is after votes from a disgruntled middle class. The party has been running the Western Cape province and is now gunning for the economic capital, Gauteng.
Over again what the DA can and
while the ANC is using its 25-year track record as the governing party, opposition parties are poking holes using corruption scandals that have emerged over the past 2.5 decades. President Cyril Ramaphosa, a billionaire who left politics in 1997 to amass his wealth, is now seen as the new face of ANC politics, although he's seen by some of his comrades as a sponsor of a capitalist system run mostly by white men who control the economy. Political commentary suggests that the ANC will need smaller parties to form coalitions in key provinces. Matuba Mahlachi, Telesur, Mpumalanga Province.
Sudan's parliament has voted to shorten a state of emergency declared by President Omar al-Bashir last month from 1 year to 6 months. Last month, Bashir declared a nationwide state of emergency in attempt to stop protests that rocked the nation since December last year. The protests erupted after a government decision to triple the price of bread. They quickly escalated into nationwide rallies calling for Bashir to step down. At least 40 people have been killed and around 150,000 displaced by floods in Mozambique. Thousands have been moved into temporary shelters. Aid workers are trying to prevent a pandemic of cholera and diarrhea. Now let's look at the Caribbean Rastafari movement and their fight for historical reparations after enslavement and the brutal killing of more than 10 million Africans.
The Rastafari movement in the Caribbean has always been at the forefront of the drive for slavery reparations. That push appeared to gain steam in 2013 when 15 Caribbean heads of government agreed to the establishment of a regional reparations commission. The symbol of the movement, the reparations baton, has been passed throughout the Caribbean in a symbolic race to the reparations finish line. But the head of the Caribbean Rastafari organization, Rasbongo Wisely Tafari, says more needs to be done at the national level if reparations for the atrocities of slavery are to become a reality.
We decided to work along with them. We have been working with them, but I must say, from St. Lucia's perspective, I personally am very disappointed in the operations of the National Reparations Committee, which was established by the government. I mean, the committee was established with no budget. Up to a day like today, the committee has not yet been launched.
Rasbongo has led reparations marches and public events throughout St. Lucia and the wider Caribbean. An elder in the Rastafarian faith, he says his members are not about to let this cause die.
We as Rastafari, as we have always stated in the beginning, we do not depend on the politicians. We acknowledge the role that the politicians have to play within the process, because reparations, repatriation, that would entail government-to-government discussions. So the government have a role to play. And we acknowledge that, so hence the reason why we have never given up on them as such. But, as I say, we are disappointed especially from the St. Lucia's standpoint.
The Rastafarian movement believes the region still has a long way to go to educate its people on the need for reparations. Rasbongo says it starts in the schools with a curriculum that teaches youth history, but from a European perspective.
A lot of the youth today, when you speak to them about reparation, they appear lost. Man, you think that making sense, man? That don't make sense again, and so on, and because of the education which they've received. First, we were taught that we are not Africans, we are St. Lucians, and they were taught that it's only Africans who were enslaved. So most of them would say, "Man, I was never enslaved, So that reparation thing is not for me, not knowing that, that is ignorance of the fact. You see, we are African descendants, and nobody can take that away from us.
For the Caribbean's Rastafarians, reparation is the next step towards true emancipation. They say they will be relentless in their goal of achieving compensation for the painful and ongoing legacy of the Atlantic slave trade. Alison Kentish, Telesur, St. Lucia.
We're taking one last break. Stay with us.
The life is full of moments. Moments of fight. Moments of hope. Moments that transcend. Moments that you can live in. Telesur documentaries. Sundays. Only on Telesur.
Welcome back. Lawmakers in the United Kingdom will vote today on a new Brexit deal. This after Prime Minister Theresa May won last-minute assurances from the European Union. If lawmakers vote down this deal, May has promised a vote on Wednesday on whether to leave without a deal. If they reject it, there will be a vote on whether to ask for a Brexit delay. The UK is due to leave the EU on March 29.
Let us speak crystal clear about the choice. It is this deal or Brexit might not happen at all. Faced with this stark reality, members of the House of Commons have a deep responsibility and a fundamental choice to make.
What we have secured, as I said, is legally binding changes, which is exactly what Parliament asked us to secure. And what we have secured is very clearly that the backstop cannot be indefinite, cannot become permanent. It is only temporary, if it is the case that we were ever to get into the backstop.
For our last story, a female football juggler from Tanzania has become a social media star. Her skills with the kipi-yapis have won Hadara Manjeje over 65,000 views and many international fans. Now she wants to find sponsors so she can continue her practice and also train other women. She fell in love with football as a child but developed a respiratory condition that kept her off the pitch.
If I manage to get sponsored, I will continue to train and improve my skills. I would also like to coach other jugglers, but there won't be many because it's about having the talent. Like for me, I can dribble with my head 5,800 times while sitting.
Our leaders, let's not only support men's soccer, support the women as well. Our government should take care of this lady. She has an amazing talent and she is flawless. She has trained hard and we see her on the TV. But for those of us women who are keeping the home, we support her.
An inspiring story indeed. And with that we come to the end of this news brief. But you can find these and many other stories if you go to our website, telesurenglish.net. You can also follow us on social media on Facebook, Twitter and Instagram. For Telesur English, I'm Carla Gonzalez. Thank you for watching.